today we're going to be talking about how to treat your leaders, and we brought in some special guests today for this recording, so if everyone wants to go around and introduce themselves, starting with Michelle.
I'm it. My name is Michelle Haynes. I've been with InTime Tech for about 8 years now, a little over 8 years, and I've been on a journey that has really helped develop who I am as a person and how I show up for people in my life, and has also really expanded my thinking as far as what I can do and what the future can be when I show up as a committed person. So I'm here to talk about leadership with all of these fine folks. Justin.
My name is Justin Wallace. I've been with InTime Tech for a year and a couple months, and coming from small town Idaho and working on a farm, I never saw this as a possibility, but this company and this platform has drastically changed the trajectory of my life and who I am, and I'm excited to talk to you guys today about more of that and leadership itself.
I'm Trevor Spielman. I just passed my 1 year anniversary here with InTime Tech, and I have been across the gamut in terms of company sizes, industries, technologies, and mentalities towards management and leadership versus, worker and follower. And so InTime Tech has completely blown those out of the water when we reveal our mentality around leadership, and then also put that mentality into action.
And I'm Annalisa. I'm normally behind the camera for these podcasts, but I'm here to give a different look about the leadership topic because these are my leaders. So I'm excited to give my input on this topic.
And I'm Tyler Martindale, and I'm a project manager at InTime Tech for about 7 years or so. And I said things to my leadership and my bosses that I never thought I would say here at InTime Tech.
Yeah.
I'm very proud to say those things and be a part of a culture where we of course value leaders, and at the same time we give leaders the space and the grace that they need to do their jobs and remember that they're human also.
Okay, and since I don't want to be out of this team, so I'm Jeet Kumar, one of the founders and the CEO of the company. And so why not I start asking a few questions and get this conversation rolling?
Let's get the party started.
Yeah, let the party start. And by the way, I'm not drinking this month, but I do drink, and I'm having water.
Here we are.
Cheers to all of us. So I think as a leader, one of the things which I see for myself is how do you show up every day? And it's a long, lonely, and at times dark journey. You need to always be the best of your best. As an entrepreneur or leader, it's go interchangeably those words. So my question for all of you guys is, what do you see in your leader in a way which is meaningful for you guys? So what kind of characteristics, what kind of capabilities do you expect a leader to show up with?
I can start on this one. I think it's really important for you to be able to empathize with the employees and kind of put yourself in their position, which I think you do a really good job of just understanding why they're at where they're at, why they're coming from, like the way that they're coming from, and just be able to work with them and just kind of like we talked about earlier, just letting your ego trip go. Leadership isn't about an ego trip, it's just kind of about being genuine and wanting the best for each individual employee. So I think that it's kind of just comes down to that individual wanting the best for every employee.
I think to build on that / counterpoint that, leader also needs to have that objective side where the employee is, elbow deep in a project, working very closely to it, has a lot of emotional investment in it because it is their work, it is their livelihood. And sometimes it's difficult to see, the forest for the trees. And a leader in that situation needs to be able to provide that step back perspective and say, yeah, you've been doing great, you've been doing all this work, and here's the bigger picture of how that work contributes to the overall goal, providing that scope for the individual so it can kind of help combat that sense of, gerbil in a wheel, just going without results. And then also can help provide the employee the insight that they need to potentially see where they need to change their tactics, improve, or see where else that they can contribute within the project that can grow them as an individual, the company as a company, and the partnership as a relationship.
Got it.
I see leadership differently even than I did 3 months ago, and something that has shown up for me based on just conversations that we've been having around the office and articles that we've been reading is that I used to define leadership as if you have it all together, you're worth following. And I'm at a point in my life where leadership is truly the ability to show up with anyone in any situation and be a cause in the matter. Like your presence in the conversation or in the relationship is that piece that propels you forward or creates action that maybe wasn't there before. So a leader being someone that can show up and create something that was absent or that was missing.
Yeah. So let's take Michelle in the having empathy, having a big vision, and connecting from the big picture to short-term, day-to-day, tactical level implementation, to having someone who have put together everything and expecting so much out of it. But at the same time, when leader is present, things get done, things get created. When they are missing, leadership is like a salt. You feel the most when it is absent, right? So otherwise, when it is there, you don't even feel it. So can you share, Michelle, an example where you have seen the presence of leader made a difference, and also when the leader was not there, it made a bit difficult, and maybe for any one of you also too. Can you think of an example at In Time Tech where something got smoothly done because leader was there, and then also it became difficult because leader was not there?
Absolutely. There was one recently, and I'm making eyes at Tyler right now because he and I co-lead a reading group here with our engineers, and the reading group is called Learn and Contribute. It was a new task for us. It was a new role for us to step into to lead this conversation, and we found that after some time, there really was a lack of clarity in the conversation as a whole. There was no direction, and we started questioning whether or not the people that were showing up and preparing for this group were actually getting value out of our time together in a way that was leaving them touch moved and inspired. So Tyler and I were able to acknowledge that something was missing and yet couldn't put our finger on what was missing.
Mm-hmm.
So we asked you to come in and just evaluate and take a pulse on what do you see that we're not seeing? And it was something that came very naturally for you. And really what the group was left with, even in that time together, was we can really create something powerfully, and we want to be here, and we want to prepare for this group in this time together. So I think that's a great example recently, just this week, that shows when leadership is missing, there's a lack of value that's being added to people's lives, and there's just this missing inspiration. And then when leadership is present, we're creating something that's making a difference.
Got it. Totally good. Go ahead, Alice.
Gee, I was just gonna ask you, how do you think people should treat leaders? If you guys are all leaders in one way or another.
Yeah.
Go through and just give that side of the spectrum.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, leader needs to treat themselves before you expect others to treat you in a way. Tyler and I have a lot of conversation on those lines. Are you complete with yourself? Are you someone who treat yourself well? So how do you expect leaders to? How do you others to treat leaders? And if I look at from my point of view how I expect others to treat me. One of the things which I want others to treat me with is with dignity and respect. Making sure that they are not putting me too high and not looking at me down. And one side I'm a team member, and another side I'm something provider. Like I'm going to provide something to make things happen. So I want them to treat me with dignity and respect, look up to me to make sure that I, as a leader, have a capability, have a vision, have a willingness to go the extra mile and lead them effectively. I also want them to treat me that when I make mistake, give me some space. Tell me what happened, and don't be super critical about it. Now, that doesn't mean that you let me go off the hook, but I want people who are following me as a leader. I want them to give me some space so that I can do better next time. Give me feedback. I want them to give me, I call it feed forward. Give me what I did that did not produce the desired result. And giving me that unbiased, unfiltered inputs will allow me to do better next time. So those are the things which I can think of, Annalisa, that's how I want others to treat me.
And I think that's important that you bring that point up, because I think it's probably scary to some people to tell their leaders what they felt like they were missing or what they could have done differently. So I think that you bring up a really good point there, saying that you expect that and want that from the people that you're leading.
Yeah, otherwise how would I get to know? I'm not perfect. Leaders are never perfect. That's another thing which I can see, that don't expect me to be perfect as a leader, or any leader for that matter, because we are human beings. Leaders are human beings. Human first, role second. Our desire is there to do better. Our willingness is there to make a difference. Our commitment is there to take people to the next level. And yet we are not perfect. And expecting leaders to show up with perfection is a recipe of disaster, if you ask me. Right? Tal, anything you want to say about that?
No, I think it's really well put, Jeet. I definitely think that you hit it out of the park when it comes to leader acknowledging first with yourself, being right with yourself, showing up for yourself as a leader first. And then as an outward experience, when that isn't working, when that falls short, when that doesn't produce the desired results with your team or with an individual, starting with yourself and asking, okay, how could I have shown up differently? What could I have done in this particular case? What does this look like on the court for this person? And really allowing yourself the space to go, all right, maybe I'm missing something here. And I think that's really valuable. And leaders sometimes aren't always perceived as getting the space to be treated that way, right? It's like you have to have, there's this misconception with leadership that they're a leader and they're in place for a reason because they have all the answers. No, they don't. They're human beings. Or they know everything about, the project that, needs to be taken care of in a certain way.
Yeah.
They don't. They're people.
Yeah, and I can also share, I was struggling to frame a few sentences in the start because I don't expect anything from people.
Yeah.
As a leader, I'm just showing up every freaking day.
Yeah.
And being there for human beings without any expectation from how the people should show up for me. Now that's also a journey. As I share, leadership is a long and lonely journey at times. While people expect you to perform and show up with a certain capabilities and certain character, and yet you feel like how long, how much, when it's going to end. And so the struggle is real for leaders also too. So I can share about mine is that while I want my people to treat me with fairness and dignity and respect and give me feedback and everything, I need to have personal stamina and a willingness that I know every day people are going to judge me, evaluate me, going to look at me. Everything is going to be measured. Everything is going to be looked at from the different filters. And I need to have that willingness to be looked at it. So going through the litmus test all the time is a key element for a leader. That's what I can say. Quite just.
Gee, I think that the slight tangent on this is how I can honestly say in year and change that I've known you, I've not encountered a time when your moods and feelings got in the way of you showing up in the moment and being a leader in any given situation.
Yeah.
And so I think that ties in nicely with how you're saying, like you're going to be judged and people may or may not think of you a certain way, yet it does not impact how you are generating yourself in any given situation.
And it's
Moment by moment.
and it requires a lot of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to be present. I think just like a couple of days ago, one of our challenges which we have dealt with, like on Friday, I think my moods and feelings were saying, gee, why do you need to do all of this? It's a Friday, let's go home.
Sure.
The football, the game is coming for BSU, let's go home.
Yeah.
You even
But-
have your shirt on.
Yeah,
You're ready.
exactly.
And what in my sharing, I don't want it to think that I don't think you have those moods. I don't think you're a robot. Yeah, I know that those occur for you,
Yes,
and you're aware, and you can still choose.
beautiful. And that's where I was also going in this thought process with you, Justin, is that not that I do not have moods and feelings, not that my mind doesn't say, oh, freaking, why do I need to do all of this? All the stuff is keep coming along and keep generating. And yet you just get present to with those thoughts, those feelings, those emotions, those moods, and you just simply let them be there. And then you go back, way back in your thinking, sit back in that chair and ask a question. Okay, if those things are coming up as moods and feelings and thoughts, do you want to do based on those? Do you want to take action based on those? Or do you want to take action based on who you are and who this company is and who the people are around you? What does that look like? We stand for creating abundance. We have a peace, happiness, joy, love. We talk about, okay, we are going to make sure that people have an open and candid and transparent conversation. We expect people to not blow up things and have a dignified conversation. We expect people to treat each other with respect and trust. All those are foundational. And when they are not happening, you as a leader have a role to play. Even though your mood is saying, okay, let's go home. And you just simply tell yourself, you better shut up. Leader, you need to tell yourself, you better shut up and do what needs to be done. Oh.
Definitely. And that's how I know you to lead.
And I'm glad to do that, Justin. And what we are deciphering and unconcealing in this conversation is what goes under the hood for a follower and also for a leader.
Sure.
Not very many people talk about those. I know the kind of thing which I need to do before I open the door, before I swipe my card at In Time Tech. I am clear that my moods and feelings, my way of good or bad, this or that is going to impact how people are going to show up. So I must be responsible in what way I show up. If I come and being grumpy and being shouting and being completely down and my shoulder is like this, it's going to impact a lot of people. People look up to your leaders.
I guess for me, in wanting to emulate that, is that something like, do you have a checklist, a conscious, like, are you going through this every day, or is it so habitual that it's just you as you're in your routine?
Beautiful. Yeah, good question. I think if you think about as a leader, as I share about what is your role, what is your responsibility, who you are in this world. So if you have chosen to be a leader, you have taken on a lifelong journey. It's a voyage which you have embarked on of making a difference on this planet. So for me, what does that checklist look like? First, it looks like if I don't show up with the right kind of mindset, what's the impact? So I reverse the question, Justin, for me. It's not that, how I'm going to show up. No, if I don't show up that way, what's the impact? What are the consequences? And then I say, oh my God, I stand for making a difference. It's going to create a even opposite of that. So I need to be responsible. So my checklist is be complete, whole and complete all the time. If something is bothering you about anything, you need to either send an email, call that person, make sure you are in a right frame of mind. Second one, you are present. Every conversation, cannot emphasize enough, every conversation you are present. Then you need to be whole and complete about integrity. I cannot say something to Michelle and then the moment she turned her back, I'm saying something else to you, Justin, about anything. I need to be consistent about what I say, when I say, to whom I say, and what I say. In fact, sometimes I don't even remember what I said because I need to be so consistent about my words and my communication that I don't need to remember. So that's another one, having integrity in the conversation. And then lastly, you need to take care of yourself where, even for like Viju, my wife, or Jay, if I'm off because of they are having a problem with me or I have a challenge at home, families are families, every family is having a challenge at times, I'm so mindful about that it's going to impact me how I'm going to show up at work. So I need to clean it up. I need to take responsibility. Every day I get up in the morning and I ask a question, gee, is it something bothering you? Is it something is not complete for you? And if it is, then I send a message out. Right then and there. It's like we talk about prayer. That's my prayer for 5 minutes. With me having my time with myself and asking a question. Am I being someone who can show up as a leader today? And if not, what is missing?
Yeah, I just think the underlying tone of all of that sharing, Gene, is action.
Yeah.
Because like you can think that and you can go through that checklist all you want, and yet every time you shared, there was some way you were acting on it as well.
Definitely, nothing will change until you act. Give up. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think one thing to take away from that is all that is on how leadership should be acting and how leaders should act while they're around or anywhere, not even just around their employees or their followers, but from a follower's perspective towards a leader, there needs to be an openness and understanding relationship. I mean, that's how they need to treat their leaders. If a follower is not open towards their leader, then the leader doesn't have the information to act in the proper manner towards.
And also Trevor, not having access to follower. See, follower is not open, and without access, leader is bound to fail.
Yeah, a leader can only be a good leader with the information that they're provided by their followers. If
Absolutely.
They don't have that information, no matter how hard the leader tries, it's a shot in the dark if they are succeeding or failing without that information.
And I want to talk about that also too. A quick one, Michelle, I will give it to you. I want to talk about what leader must do when there is a resistance from follower. What leader should do when there is a non-sharing or non-openness from the followers.
And I think that could go both ways too. Both ways. I think that it would be nice if you also said steps that a follower could take if the leader isn't open to.
Yeah, and by the way, if leader is not open, fire him. Because that person not supposed to be leader anyway.
Yeah.
So it's an autocrat or he's like something who is everything other than a leader.
Yeah.
Right? So, but I can talk about that also too. But I want to build upon that. What happens when followers are not trusting leaders? When followers are not open? When followers are showing up the resistance? Followers when they are not listening? What a leader can do. So I want to talk quickly about that. I'll give it to Michelle. One of the things which I get present to it, when I talk with some, like you 5 of you are there, and Tasha is sitting behind the camera, when I start talking, and if I see where either you checked out, or you have a resistance, or you were asking me twice the question, or I asked you to do something and you did not follow up, or you give me some nodding and then you just say, okay, blah, blah, blah.
Sometimes it's just a
Or
look,
someone says,
right?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Just one sideways look, and it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's where we're at.
That's where we're at today.
The moment I experience that, I ask a question. Myself as a leader is, gee, what is it which you are not listening from your followers? What are you missing out? Because they are great human beings. They want to do it. Either you have not articulated your thoughts in a way which they can digest, agree, follow, or they are not able to get it where you are going. You are not able to communicate. You are not giving them a why yet, or why is not compelling enough for them to buy into it. So anytime when I see resistance, non-openness, and everything we talked about, I take a step back and ask a question. What are you doing, Chief? And then I change my thinking and use my different words and make it happen. That's what I say, right? So that's what I would like to do. And then Michelle, you're going to talk about that. Go ahead, Michelle.
So I want to weave together both your sharing and what Trevor was sharing. And Trevor, in your sharing earlier, what I really got out of that was leadership isn't one directional.
Mm-hmm.
It requires two people to engage and participate in a conversation so that there is feed forward and there is an understanding and an awareness of how each person is showing up and where each person could maybe examine further. And then, G, you were talking about like, what do we do when there's resistance? And when there is, the first question that you ask yourself is, what am I missing? How am I really listening? And why am I occurring this way? I don't really have anything to add to that in the sense that truly being in the moment and having, we call them triggers around here, allowing your triggers to be hit by something that someone says or becoming defensive or watching someone you're interacting with become defensive, having that awareness to stop in that moment and to ask the question is still a muscle that you build over time.
And you can see, Michelle, in order to do that, first you need to be present, and then not only you need to be present, that you are present to even intervene.
Yes.
At that time, that, oh my God, somebody's not listening.
Yeah.
Otherwise, your first way of doing, let's keep pushing through, and why you're not listening, why you're not getting. Go ahead, Travis, you want to say something?
I was wrapping my head around the presence.
Yeah, so being present, that you need to be present. That I need to be being there in the conversation and keep listening for.
Well, and not just being there in the conversation, but be thoughtful about when you're discussing and having a conversation and somebody isn't getting it or something isn't jiving, something's not lining up right, starting with yourself.
Yeah.
Really examining a self-examination called, all right, was there something that was missing from this conversation that I wasn't bringing that could have made a difference? And then immediately you open up to the other person and are able to have a conversation or coming together of thoughts and ideas. It's like, I feel like something was missing from that. Can you help me understand what you got out of that and share with me a little bit more about how that showed up for you and how I showed up for you? And that takes a different level of understanding, empathy, and really care
And compassion.
and compassion.
Right? Love and compassion.
Absolutely.
I think people talk about servant leadership. I say leadership is always servant leadership. It's like, literally, I don't use the word servant leader.
Yeah.
I'm always a servant.
So,
I'm
Chief,
serving.
one thing I want to clarify, and where there's, I think, a clear distinction here between where leadership as like traditional management shows up, right? Whatever's happening with, I'm the leader and Michelle is on my team, right? And just something's not working for her today. But I don't know, Michelle's moody. Like, she'll figure it out. Something's like just in her way. And
Yeah.
I'm just gonna assume that there's problems and, she was up all night and whatever, like, deal with it. Versus, man, something really wasn't working for Michelle in that conversation. What got missed? What was missing? And maybe that's me, maybe that's her, but something wasn't quite right. And now I have to be an activator. Now I need to generate myself as somebody who can come in and say, hey, look, I feel like there was just something not quite all there in that last conversation. Can you share with me a little bit more about where you're at and what's going on?
Beautiful. And I think that you would only do that because you care.
Totally.
Not only you want to get the work done, and I think that distinction and definition, I will give you the definition of management and leadership. And I think sometimes we think you never lead tables, right? You never lead any team. You never lead that way. I think you always manage things and lead people. So for me, management is when you have to achieve a desired result by using the given resources against the constraints. Right? That's a management. Spreadsheet, PowerPoint slides, scheduling, working with all the nitty-gritty of the things. While leadership is when your action inspires others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and to become more. That's leadership. And it's leadership is inspiration. Leadership is when your action, not Michelle's action or Justin or Trevor, Alicia or Tyler's actions or Tasha's action. No, my action. And same for Michelle, whoever she's leading. By the way, if you want to measure a leader, you always watch two things. Who is following them and who they are following to will tell you the size of a leader. Always. A player will always follow A plus player. Always. And so for me, not only I put a demand on myself that who I am following, if I'm A plus, somebody has to be A double plus. And then also someone who is following me, you better be A. I'm going to otherwise kick your back. I was about to say something else.
That was very appropriate.
Well, and as that follower, you can't have resentment towards who you're following. Because I mean, if there's resentment, there's something unresolved. There is an aspect of the relationship that one party is unhappy with, but really, when you look at it, almost any resentment can be resolved through communication and a kind of coming together of ideals, whether or not that is, each party sees the other party's view and is okay with it, or there's a recognition of there is a barrier here that is right now too tall to cross and part ways, and then you are no longer in that leadership follower relationship.
And I think, Trevor, you can see resentment starting of that is a mistrust.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't trust someone, trust is such a key element of leadership and follow-up.
Yeah.
Always. If as a leader, if I missed out people's trust, if I lost people's trust, there's no way in the world, no way freaking any way possible for me to lead anything. And it's a key. Go ahead, Annalisa.
I think that's a great slight transition into one of the points I wanted to make sure got brought up. I know we discussed that if a leader, you need to treat a leader as human, they're going to make mistakes, and leaders need to give themselves grace for those mistakes. How do you suggest for our audience, or even just ourselves, if a leader continues to make mistakes and continues to fall short, how the followers should handle that?
Yeah, definitely. So, what we talked about, leader has to demand from themselves a lot.
Okay.
And yet they are not perfect. So they are going to make mistakes. So followers need to give them a grace and a space. Along with that, they must give them a feedback. And we talk about feed forward. So my suggestion to audience, if you are a follower of some leader, by the way, all leaders are followers.
Mm-hmm.
And all followers is leader or can be a leader. So it's depending on the situation. At times I'm following someone, at times I'm leading someone, right? So my suggestion to you, if you are following, make sure you give a grace to a leader. If you are a leader, you demand a lot and give grace to yourself to make mistakes. But follower must give them a feed forward. Now, after giving the feed forward, and if leader is still sloppy, make another mistake, similar mistake, if not the same mistake, I think followers should challenge and demand a lot that what the heck? What are you doing? I told you it's not working. It will have a ramification. It has implications. And either you are not improving, you are in your moods and feelings. So I think we need to give them a grace, and yet we need to demand if they keep making same mistake. Because otherwise people's life is at stake. Organizations are at stake. The growth is at stake. The vision is at stake. And leader has to demand and generate themselves a lot to perform as per the expectation of the followers.
So that feeds into what the conversation we had a few days ago, that when you were talking about how to be a leader, you can't have a big ego. So you have to, the leaders, from what I get from what you're saying, is the leaders also have to be open to feedback. And if they aren't open to feedback and they aren't open to how they can improve themselves or feed forward, I guess, then they're not a true leader.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Oh, totally. Because, by the way, ego, let's define that one for a minute. What is ego?
We're all laughing.
Yeah.
It's very indicative of something.
Yeah. I think ego is inner focus. ego is a survival. Ego is proving a point that I'm worth it. Ego comes from the past. Ego comes from the place called, oh, I'm not good enough. And if you have those characteristics or symptoms, you need to work on yourself first before you take on a leadership role.
Ego's compensation.
Yeah,
For your
for something
weaknesses.
which is not there.
And I think,
Go ahead.
okay, and G, you highlighted on something in your last talk, and ego feeds right into that, is the leadership follower role is not consistent.
Mhm.
It can vary from month to month, day to day, even hour to hour. For example, if we were in a meeting and I was talking about business objectives with a client, then Michelle may be the leader for that. And my role at InTime Tech as being a developer could be taken back seat since I'm more focused on the technical side. However, flip the roles and the meeting is about a technical aspect of the project that we're currently involved in. That's not a place that Michelle can truly be a leader because she doesn't have the knowledge and the experience to lead that conversation and lead the group of people. So that's where then the roles are reversed. I'm now the leader and she's the follower. And you can't have that quick role reversal that is essential if you have an ego on either side. Because at some point that ego will cut that switch from leader to follower off.
Yeah, and I want to quickly share about yesterday's meeting. Trevor, you were there, and I don't want to use our customer name, but you were there with one of our customers, and you could see there was a variety of conversation was happening in that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
When it was initially one of the lead engineer was sharing, he was leading the conversation, even though the other company's CEO was there. And from our side, Trevor, you were leading the conversation about how it needs to be and what needs to happen, all this stuff. But when it came to the vision and everything, where the engagement needs to go, CEO to CEO conversation was happening. So you are absolutely right. Now you need to reverse the role, you need to change the role. I call it more of a dancing in the conversation.
Yeah.
You need to dance in the conversation. And if you are so self-centric, if you are always about you and not giving space to the people, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard. Right? So I'm glad that you share that experience for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Michelle, you were going to say something?
Yeah, there was something about how you defined ego, Jeep, that really it created this compassion within me as I heard you describing it.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes I think of ego as being associated with righteousness or vanity or just something kind of hard. And the way you describe it is ego is really just a symptom of a wound.
Mm.
And when you share it in that light, it really does generate empathy instead of anger or righteousness. It almost stops the cycle. So I just appreciate that new definition, that new lens of what ego is and how it shows up.
And I appreciate you got that way because that's exactly what it is, Michelle. And I want our audience to carry it. Ego is not a problem. Each human being has ego because it is, am I good enough? Do you love me? I need something. I need to prove a point that I'm worth it. The past, the emptiness and voidness, I need to fulfill those needs.
It's almost a manifestation of insecurities.
Yeah, insecurity. And by the way, I have an ego too.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You do?
Right? I
Wait,
do.
what?
And what I get present to as a leader, that I need to work on my ego, to put that aside. All those needs, which is like you use the word wound, like that has been not treated fully, and that energy is still flowing around you. So that wound is making you who you are. Now, you getting present to and realizing that's there and having the ability to put that aside. Also, when people you are leading, knowing that everyone has an ego and they may not be that much skilled to take care of their ego. And when that ego shows up, you rather than becoming ruthless about that or making that wrong, you become compassionate. You help them, you love them, you hug them, you embrace them.
And I think that's easy to spot in the great leaders of history. you listen to how people describe great leaders of the past, Martin Luther King always comes to mind in my head. And often a characteristic of these leaders is they were very humble, they were very kind. And that's almost unanimous across every great leader of history. And they may have had their points of being aggressive and decisive, which was appropriate for the situation. And then you reverse that, you look at all the great villains of humankind. And oftentimes they are described as egotistic, the opposite of humble, the opposite of kind. And they really kind of go hand in hand, and you just have to think those egocentric tendencies did come from a wound.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder what would have happened if they had been open and exposed to a leader who could help heal that wound. Where would that ego have gone?
Can you see that?
Where would their energies have gone?
And how they could have been if the wound were treated and leader could have made a difference in their lives.
The impact of seeing ego in that light is that ego doesn't become something that you, as a leader or a manager, feel like you need to break.
Yeah, absolutely.
It becomes something that you want to love.
Yeah, and so I want to quickly touch upon before we end about that aspect, because at times it can be treated by love and affection and compassion. Other time you need to become a ruthless also too. So most of the time when I become a ruthless as a leader, if I show up, I ask a question. Am I being ruthless right now because I'm angry, frustrated? Am I want something for me? Or am I that way because it's the only way I can break through the ego of other person? And that distinction, we talked about being present, that you are present. Knowing when to have a love, compassion, and a heart, and knowing when to bring the ruthlessness in the conversation, allow you to produce the kind of result you need to produce and go beyond the ego.
Tough love.
Totally blows my mind. Your words, you use breakthrough.
Yes.
The ego isn't something that you need to break. The
Yes.
ego is something you need to break through. And
Yes.
you can do that with both ruthlessness and love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Tasha, we have planned anything from you before we end?
No, I think this has been a beautiful conversation. I know that we started it kind of with this idea of how to treat your leaders, and it really turned into a conversation about some insight about what it is to be a leader and what it is to be a follower. And I think that all feeds into the conversation of how to treat your leaders and how to treat your followers. Having that understanding of where people are showing up and why they're showing up that way can really lend to some compassion and some understanding when situations do get tough, when maybe you do get frustrated with your leader, or maybe you are frustrated with, somebody on your team. So this has been really powerful.
Okay. Yeah, great. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you for being together, right? In the company as well as in this conversation. And I think I love you guys so much. And like Michelle, you and Tyler for a long, long time. And, a year or so, but 7, 8 years. And
Oh, baby.
and what we have created, what we have done, it's always learning and growth. Growth, like as our life depends on it. And so I appreciate you guys coming along, and Michelle, you and Tyler making such a big difference and then bringing this company to where it is today. And I can see the future. I can see the future of this company because of leaders like you. You are not a follower for me. You are a hardworking, committed, genuine, loving, caring, compassionate leader. And I truly appreciate your contribution. And I do. Okay? So thanks for making this possible.
Thank you.
Thanks, G.
Thanks, G.
Thank you.